Hello there, this is Debbie Heiser, and I am so stinking excited to share this new season 4 with you. And I can't believe that this is already the 4th season of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. And I just want to thank each of you who listen. And my hope is that the tools, the thoughts and experiences I share, as well as the work I've done to love myself, love others, and love the work I'm called to do, that also helps me lead a truly lit up life, will help you move into a more lit up life yourself. A few things to look for in this season. Super excited to share that we're going to be coming to you now every week with episodes jam-packed with information to serve you. Every other week, you'll hear from a guest who's leading a life that they love, and I'll be asking them to share their stories, how they got there, and any thoughts or advice that they can give you, our loyal listeners. We have new music too, and I'm so thrilled to introduce this song called Ride, sung and co-written by my friend, Miss Jackie Wilson. And she, along with her collaborators, Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee, are super talented and generous, as this song fits perfectly into the thought of stepping into your best life. To follow any or all of these talented folks, check out the show notes for their social handles. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy season 4 and do us a solid and leave us a rating and a comment to help us be able to share more with people across the globe. Now, let's get started with this episode.
You're the only one who really can transform your mind.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am so excited today to have my good friend Christina Reddick on. And as you can see, she has her bike helmet behind her, and I'm sure she's going to talk a little bit about her biking and swimming and everything else she does. But let me tell you a little bit about how I met Christina, why I think she's so interesting. Christina and I met through Gonzaga University. And I don't remember, Christina, if we were both taking our masters at the time, or did we meet as TAs?
We met as TAs.
Okay, I couldn't remember exactly which way. So a TA, for those of you listening, is a teacher's assistant. We were helping our kind of mentor, Dr. Jack Horsman, who is a retired professor now at Gonzaga, with a class that has changed both of our lives. It's called Foresight and Strategy. I can't say enough about that program at Gonzaga, and Christina is in the doctoral program right now. We're going to talk a little bit about that today too. And part of what I find so interesting about you, Christina, is you have this really interesting past story.
Yeah.
You have a really interesting present story, and a really, like, I look into this, like, I don't want to say a crystal ball, right? But like in this like lens, like I'm thinking about like on a ship of like what's in your future and what's like as you lean into this emerging future of what's happening. And to me, it's like these different chapters of a book. And I know you have a book or are still writing that book, and we'll talk about that here too. But I want you to introduce yourself to the listeners and people viewing this on YouTube, and tell us a little bit about your professional background.
Thank you. So I'll start a little bit with my past, and this that I'm going to plug actually emerged from a mentorship I did with Gonzaga as part of the doctoral program. So I am a native from South Florida, born and raised in Miami, and I actually grew up to a career father, the first half of my childhood, I like to say, in the 1980s. So during a wild time in Miami. And that's kind of where my story really begins. And then I moved to Broward. He was incarcerated, and I moved with my mom, and really had a chance to redefine who I am and myself. And I guess it's been a life journey. And I think that Foresight and Strategy class helped me through this. Managing where I came from and what that means as far as who I am.
Yeah.
And taking ownership and defining who I am based on who I want to be and what I find important and valuable. And like, as you said, like then kind of taking whatever from the past you can and really shifting your future. A lot of people talk about when there's trauma in their past, it's talked a lot publicly. Today, when I was younger, it wasn't. It was something that was hidden, and even if you were in therapy, you definitely did not tell an employer. You usually didn't tell your friends.
Yeah, you kept it secret, right?
Yeah.
Which I want to go back just really quickly. I don't want to interrupt you, but I missed something there because you said your father was a career, but you didn't put career, like there was no word to that.
Career criminal.
Career criminal. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. And so basically, a lot happened to me, but there was definitely this wanting to be normal, wanting to be average.
Whatever normal is, right? Yeah.
So like I strive to be average, right? And then I got to a point, that 40-year mark, whatever, when you realize, the things that you thought you wanted in your 20s or teenage years was not actually the ideal. And then I was like, screw being average. Like, why did I even want that? That's like a horrible goal. Like, what was I thinking,
And Christina, what was the precipice that caused you to have that shift?
I think it was once I started sharing my story and sharing who I was and started being seen for not, once I got out of the mind frame, or my audience shifted and I was no longer getting the message like, oh, but it made you who you are today and it made you so stronger and blah, blah, blah. So that message I do not agree with. I think it's BS and it's a bad message. But people started seeing me for me and who I am.
Versus your past.
Yeah, and are like, you are strong despite that. So you are excelling and you are amazing. And you have an inspirational story of where you came from, not because of it. And that was a huge shift. And it took other people. Really, I think the first person that spoke to me like that was one of my peers in my class from Gonzaga, Julie Silbar. And she was probably the first person to see me that way from that perspective.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps, Christina, because isn't that what we all strive for, is to be seen for who we are, not for what happened to us, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the basic of it. That's the basis of the major shift in my life, really. And now I'm still playing, though, how do I tell that story then, right? So it's gone from like this non-fictional, doing the Amazon release, book thing, to a fictional story, a coming of age story, like all these shifts. And most of these shifts and things that I have decided to change in delivering my story to the world has been about me taking ownership of my story. Because then I decided, well, I didn't want Oprah's book club to be the deciding factor if my story was good or not. I wanted to decide how to deliver, or actually I want to decide how to deliver my story to the world. And I think, I embrace technology, and that's a little bit about the business. Dominative's working on a sports technology that's delivering virtual racing worldwide. I'm a strong advocate of technology, and I believe it will move society forward in a positive manner more than a negative manner. And most people from my generation don't agree with me on that, right?
They're like, oh my gosh, I have to get rid of my flip phone? What do you mean?
Exactly. And my child won't look me in the eye and they don't know how to talk to each other, right? So that's what I hear all the time from fellow parents. But I believe that technology is one of the things that'll push our society forward and push the needle in a direction that's positive. And NFTs and how NFTs have opened up the way art is delivered to the world really made me step back and think, oh my God, like I don't have to deliver my story the way I thought I did.
Yeah.
And I don't have to deliver it all at one time. Because part of, I think, what's limiting for people that are writing about their experiences is you have to have this huge comprehensive thing. Like you have to tell the whole story. And it has to be great. And you know, oh, you want Oprah's book club, and you want this other book club, or you want to be an Amazon bestseller. And the reality is impact and change does not come in one instant.
So true. So tell me where you came up with that thought pattern, because I agree with that.
I think the foresight and strategy class and TAing over different classes. So I would, and for listeners that haven't had a Theory U experience, you know, there's going to be some terminology that you may not know what I'm talking about, but there's this segment in the class at Gonzaga where we do the guided imagery.
Yeah, so we do a guided meditation, right? And just really quickly, Christina, this class, for those of you that are listening, we've done a few segments on some things with this, but this class is designed to help you integrate your head, your heart, listening to your body, and also your intuition all together to see what's emerging in your future. So just a little side note to that. So Christina, keep going. This guided meditation that we do.
So in this guided meditation, a lot of imagery and symbolism comes up, and you have to be open to accepting that for what it is. And you come into any class or any structure, anything you're doing, whether it's for professional development or for a degree, with an end goal in mind and an obtainable goal. You have a syllabus with objectives, blah, blah, blah. I would say it doesn't apply in the guided imagery segment of it. So you're given, I don't know what to call it, inspirations. Mm-hmm. And then it would be months, weeks, months, years later that those things, those opportunities would come up.
Yeah. So let me ask you something, because I don't know about you. And so I want to see if this holds true for you. But like my business started basically, I mean, I was doing a few things, you know, here or there once in a great while. But then when I moved here and I took that foresight and strategy class, all of a sudden it became crystal clear to me that I needed to start my business. And I started it and then eventually stepped into it. And I'm finding that way back in like 2015, I'm kind of aging myself, when I went through the class, like I go back through my journal and I see things now starting to come to fruition because, you know, a couple of things. The law of gestation says sometimes there's a gestation period that it takes, and sometimes I just held back and didn't go do it, right? But like to your point, this came out. So tell me a little bit, because you're doing some really exciting stuff today, and that class helped you see some imagery and some things. What came out of that for you that's happening today?
So, well, one of the big things that came out of the class that's happening today, I think, is my connection with other female founders or women founders. Yeah. And part of the work I'm doing in my therapy with my psychologist with EMDR.
Yeah.
So when I first took foresight and strategy, I didn't have, when I first TA'd the class with you, I believe, I can't remember exactly.
I know there's so many.
There's so many times I TA'd. I think I TA'd in total 4 times so far. So I think the very first time I took the class, this first time I took the class as a participant, things emerged, and I was just starting to really settle in the diagnosis of chronic PTSD and what that meant for my life and limitations and things like that. And I was on a lot of heavy medications when I took that class. And I was very like ashamed, not because of what I was going through, but because of the limits I thought it put on myself.
Oh, going back to that message of some of the things that have happened to you were creating who you were versus it just happened to me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And remember, I missed the first day of the class because of it, because
I
I
think
would
I TA'd your class, actually.
movie, I don't remember.
Yeah, keep going. Sorry, I remember this.
So I came in the second day and started with the group of fours that, I mean, you're four people in a group and you're doing the postures
Yes.
back and forth. And then you're moving through it. So you're stuck and then you're moving unstuck. And through the years, our little exercises had reinvented themselves, right?
Right.
That's what it was for that time. It was Dr. Horseman, somebody else, a woman from Lagos, I believe, and a peer that I already knew from another previous summer I'd taken a class, Scott. And my stuck position was PTSD. And so, but you don't tell anyone that, right? And then I moved to my unstuck position, and I was going to bring a tear to my eyes. Scott saw what I was going through, but voiced it in such a way that was encouraging rather than limiting, And so I was like, kind of like, I wasn't skeptical of the process at all, because when you have PTSD, like, you're creating, like, you have flashbacks, you're creating a false reality, right? So like, that's the one thing that opens up to you, is you're like, okay, I can believe anything can happen right now because I cannot believe what's happening in my brain right now. So anything is possible.
That's interesting.
So I wasn't skeptical of the process, but I was surprised at the nonverbal aspect, how much he could get out of me just doing a pose and moving. And then also just how supportive it was. He was like, you have so much to give to the world and you don't see it.
That's life-changing. You've had some really pivotal people through the program at Gonzaga make some pretty big, it sounds like, pointed out some things that your teacher knew inside, but helped you shift your entire perspective and your mindset about it.
Exactly. And, part of the thing that I was taught growing up to a career criminal father is that you don't trust other people, you don't write anything down. Like, yes, there's, like, if you have a crew or whatever, people you work for and you're doing these things together, but even among those people, you don't talk about the other things you do. Like, it's a very lonely, isolating life.
Yeah, so it sounds very compartmentalized too.
It is.
Which would be stressful.
Oh, yeah. And I grew up with all those as my foundational ways of learning to survive in the world. And so then in Gonzaga, what I learned is, like, there's safety in not being that way.
Yeah.
And there's beauty and support in not being that way. And you may mess up, and that's okay. And in the criminal world, it's very detrimental to mess up.
Oh, sure.
So it's very different. I all of a sudden was given this breath of being able to take the time, being allowed to make mistakes, given the opportunity to correct mistakes, and also engaging with others in a way that was easier for me because of the upbringing and the PTSD. So what happens a lot of time is I freeze in situations. So I'm the freeze of, lots of people say flight, fright, but there's flight, fright, freeze, and fawning. And so I freeze. And so, I would be in meetings with a supervisor or boss and wouldn't be able to speak, And so having this class appear that taught nonverbal communication at a leadership level I was like,
Mind blowing.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, was this created just for me and what I'm going through? And I mean, the answer is it wasn't. But in a way, the class
In a way
teaches.
it was.
Well, yeah, it was. In a way, it was. So things are taught individually for you in community. And there's a lot of paradoxes in that statement, but that's what Gonzaga has really given me, this understanding, of being able to sit in the ambiguity. Okay, I can't say
Ambiguity.
that word. Ambiguity. Yeah. And even though I can't say it, I can sit in it. And understanding that things aren't always going to make sense now.
Yeah.
That you will get inspiration and sight and sometimes neon signs flashing of the unknown unknowns that are coming from the future. And that is kind of what has kept me going as a tech entrepreneur, to be honest.
Yeah. So let's shift there. Because I want to hear, like, you had a company too that you were partnering with someone, and is that's still up and running? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's still up and running. It's taken a hit like all other event production companies. So with Veronica View, who has graduated from the PhD program,
I'm so excited for her.
Now a tenured professor at Bemidji State University. I'm in the process of buying her out of the in-person production side of the company, and she's dropped to advisor on the sports technology side. But yeah, I started out with her. We met through a class, and she really taught about, or did a lot of research and talks about the indigenous business practices and as a foundational structure.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's what I need help with, is like what I call the MBA stuff. And she's great at being there in the creation stage of businesses and companies, which just speaks, she's a tenured professor of entrepreneurship in Bemidji State University and inspiring tons of entrepreneurs through that role now. So I still have the in-person event production. Our major event that we collaborated with Trinidad on got on hold. It's for the future.
Yeah. So tell us, what's the name of that? Because I always mess it up.
So it's Dominative is the in-person event production, and then the sports technology is just Dominative. So that's like the Dominative.
Okay. So you went through a brand change then.
Well,
did you go through a brand change?
No.
Or a name change?
We just had not branded the app yet. So.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so let's talk about that. So you have an app. Tell us all about, like, what is this? What are you doing with this? How did this come about? Yeah, tell us.
Like everything, it came about in stages, but finally in 2019, I realized that no one in the endurance sports industry that I had direct connections with was ready to really take the leap and create something that would expand and fill the void of virtual racing. Now, this was pre-COVID. So I was saying
so you saw what was emerging. Yeah.
And I still have this. I mean, I think virtual racing, like how I talked about technology, my big why do I do this, is to help push the needle to end sexism in sports. So that's my big why and my passion. I believe the more that you're not being lined up in your gender and age category right next to you and being corralled, the less and less we're doing that, the more and more you have the opportunity to really competitively engage physically through sports. And technology allows that. So part of the secret sauce to the app is it compares like walking among competitors based on geography and GPS geo-tracking, as opposed to gender and age. And that was a big necessity pre-COVID that we saw. It also connects registration, training, and race day. And so that was another thing that came out of that customer evaluation process. So winter 2019, I did something called the Founders Institute, and I met an individual there, one of the mentors, that had talked about this breakdown he had and all of this horribleness. He was this big name and everything. And I bonded with him because I was like, I'm having a breakdown right now.
A shared experience.
Yeah, like PTSD is messing me up. And I can't continue to be successful the way that I'm leading my life, basically.
Yeah.
And working and doing things. And so we connected, and he was just, yeah, there are some people, for whatever reason, you have to be an entrepreneur. You're called to it. Like, you have to have, and I said, like, there's so many things I learned in my PhD program that support me as a leader, even with this, but I'm not able to do those things going to my 9 to 5. And he's like, yeah, because your boss isn't going to understand. You need to go walk on the beach for 3 days and clear your mind and figure out what the hell's going on, not just with you, but with everyone in your department. I was like, yes, but that's what the world needs. Why, if I break a bone, it's understood, but if I'm having something go on inside my brain that no one can see, it's not understood.
I think, Christina, tell me what you think about this, but I think sometimes it's because people can't see it. Like, I've talked to other people about too, how like physical abuse you can see. When you have emotional and trauma-based items that happen, people don't see it, so therefore it doesn't exist. Big quotations, right?
Right. And that's a big belief system of the human experience. If you can't see it, you can't do it. Visualization is so powerful. So it goes back to us being humans. And again, I think with that advancement of medical technology, eventually we will be able to see it. Our medical, and if you talk to how many times have we heard the scientists throughout the pandemic saying, we're managing the best to our abilities today. And that means that in 20 years, we hope to have the tools, the methodologies, and the ability to manage things much better. There's a lot of things in science and medicine that you still can't see to this day. And when you are able to see them, it'll be easier for everybody, right?
Absolutely. And Christina, as you say that, I literally across my hallway in my office, because we have this empowerment center here with like multiple women in offices here. And she does brain mapping, where she actually maps the brain and sees where there's been trauma that has occurred and helps to rewire your brain, which she shows on these instruments when, like, how things have happened. But to me, like, it's not as well known, like it's emerging, right? Like, people are starting to see that.
And it's not part of, I don't know what to call it, but routine medicine, right?
Yeah.
So I got, I had some new symptoms emerge, and I was able to get like a functional brain MRI and the EEG and all of the things. And I'm thinking, like, I was diagnosed like more than 5 years ago. Why didn't this imagery happen back then? And there's so many reasons for it. There's so many reasons. It's not one, there's not one fix. And things like Theory U, I believe, are the tools that need to be incorporated in higher levels of decision making to give the breadth of things coming to existence that can help us really marry the idea of mental and physical. Because I no longer see mental and physical as two different things anymore. And this was not because of my diagnosis. So when I was diagnosed for a full year, I would walk into my psychiatrist and my psychologist. I went to my psychiatrist once a month and my psychologist almost twice a week back then, because the symptoms were very difficult and I was trying to keep the same lifestyle going.
Yeah.
And I kept asking, like, why can't I just go back to how I was before for a full year? You know, like I should just be able to go back to how I was before, and there's really nothing wrong with me, and blah, 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 this and that. And now I wouldn't want to, first of all, but I saw this as something I could think or pill away. And that's not to say that in the future, that won't be how we treat PTSD.
Right.
But I think the surrounding structures will have shifted so much that you will have the technology and the support maybe to think it away. But I think thinking at that time will be something different.
Yeah, because it really does
as a physical process more, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really intriguing, because I do a lot of, I call it brain science, but it's neurology, right? And I'm not a neurologist, but I talk about basic brain science, right? About the messaging from that comes into your subconscious that creates a belief, that creates our actions and our habits. And that's kind of what I hear you saying. And so you've taken all of that and been able to then start this company that then is helping people do all sorts of race events online, be part of a virtual community. So kind of as we end and wrap up here, tell us, like, if someone is listening or watching and wanted to find out more about that and sign up for a race, do something with, interact with that technology, where would they go to find it?
So you can go to our website, and we have basically, you sign up as a contact to our contact list. And
what's the website, Christina?
It's dominativedevelopment.com. We probably will have a brand shift because it's a horrible long, my email is terrible to type out. But dominative development.com. There'll be a pop-up box that shows the app's logo, and then you can type in like your name and your email, and you're on our contact list. We did an alpha launch. Our alpha launch is closed, and we got all the customer validation. We only did it with a specific number of endurance athletes that had done races before. Our beta launch will be to onboard businesses or organizations. So it doesn't have to be, when I say businesses or organizations in all shapes and sizes. So that means if you're planning your family reunion, you can sign up as an organization.
Oh, cool.
And our beta launch will be, people can actually start hosting races. It's going to be a set number. It will be a closed beta launch. And that way we can get all the information, and you will be able to create the race and then send it out to your particular users, or you can send it, or we'll advertise it to our users. So we have a growing user list of 35,000 plus. That's part fantastic. Of our marketing and, trying to prove ourselves in the world.
And Christina, for me too, I'm going to a couple of different spaces here, and then we do need to wrap up. But one is, if you want to race and you want to do that, check that out, because there's races across the world that you could become a part of and be a part of that virtual community. But then I'm also thinking about, back in the day after my mom passed away, her social sorority or service sorority started a walk in her name that then they funded scholarships with. So like, as an organizer, this could be, if I'm hearing you correctly, this could be a really cool tool to help you organize something like that takes away some of the headache of trying to market it, get it out there, get more people signed up, go through that whole sign up process, all of that stuff that used to be very manual.
Yes. And what we've learned through COVID is that, so like that organization you spoke of, they may have a small group of people that walk together annually on a certain date. And that's not necessarily the fundraising, that's more of community and keeping the memory alive. Okay, that's one side of it. You can still do that and do the virtual race. So what became very important is for our technology to be in addition to in-person experiences, not replacing the in-person experiences.
Right.
And that is a shift that I learned creating this through COVID and directly from what businesses wanted and kind of emerging out of COVID. So, I mean, it's like, thank God I didn't have the 500K to launch in 2019, because I wouldn't have got that message. But now I'm ready for it. So
bring it on.
bring on the investments.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if anybody's listening and wants to be an investor, contact Christina through the website. And it sounds like too, it's a good integration. That's what I'm seeing as the emerging future that's happening here, is that there's an integration happening of in-person and virtual at the same time. Right. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say there too. So Christina, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, go to your website. Is there any place else that they could follow you or anything on social?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm at Christina Marie Reddick. So it's just my name, Christina Marie Reddick. And I am on Facebook and Twitter. But right now, my app for LinkedIn is always pinging.
Okay. Perfect. Well, Christina, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I could have gone on another 30 minutes with you, but in the essence of trying to keep my podcast anywhere between 20 and 35 minutes, we're going to wrap it up for today, but who knows, we might have you again in the future after some of these other races have happened. I'd love to hear how that happened or how that turned out. So with that, thank you so much for listening. If you would like to speak with me about how you can lead your lit up life and figure out how to become really crystal clear on what you want, what are the obstacles that stand in your way? And then how do you plan accordingly, both internally and externally, to make that happen? I'd love to talk to you, and I would be willing and give away a 30-minute consult. Please go to my website at www.leadyourlituplife.com. And thanks for listening. We'll see you another time.
Find your own kind of happy.